Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Indie Diarist podcast, a show on the most lovable, meaningful and inspiring indie devs and tales from the world of gaming. Speaking to you today is your loyal indie diarist himself, Anthony L. Wolf, which is me, by the way. Social media content manager by day, writer by night. Well, actually writer all the time these days. And today with me is a very special guest, Thomas Kildren, or Thomas Fletcher Kildren. I don't know how you would prefer to be called, but we'll go with Thomas for the rest of this call. So if that's okay with you. So Thomas, why don't you tell us more, or tell me and the audience more about yourself and what you do, and yeah, just what are you up to at the moment?
Well, like you said, I'm Thomas. I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I'm making a VR game based on the drawings of my kid. He's on the autism spectrum and generally communicates a lot more through drawing than he does by speaking. And the idea is that if I can get any traction with my game, I would like part of the proceeds to go to autism awareness and acceptance. And if it really takes off, I would love to create a companion app for my game that'll allow a parent to use a smartphone or tablet and take a picture of their kid's drawing, and the app will cut it, rig it, and animate it so a kid can play their own artwork in game. Mind you, I won't be held responsible for giant walking penises and things like that.
Yeah, well, that's always the risk, isn't it? With
kids, they'll do it.
Yeah, they will do it. They will do it. But they will also do all the amazing things that I've seen in Booper Get Home, such as like beautiful scenery and just the beautiful little drawings. The character himself is so lovely to see walking on screen. And there are more questions for that as we'll go into this chat. But yeah, I guess we can start with a little icebreaker. So, what's your favorite game? Choose one indie and one AAA if you want, or either or, just up to you.
Well, currently, I'm going to have to go with Half-Life Alyx. I have just been blown away by that. The sheer amount of interactivity, the artwork, just everything was so engrossing. Otherwise, I would have probably gone with like all-time Half-Life 2, just because I fell in love with the franchise. I've been a PC gamer since, I don't know, maybe 95 or so. And those initial steps into, the actual 3D realm, like Quake 1 and whatnot, kind of lured me in. And then when Half-Life itself came out, the whole idea of a narrative game, one that actually told the story beyond kill all the enemies, get the key, go to the next level. It was amazing to me, and I was just instantly hooked. But lately, like, Alyx seems to have raised that bar, and I found myself quite a few times just wandering through the levels just to like stare at the texture maps, look at the reflections and the puddles and things like that. It's just such an amazing world building experience. And when you had said pick an indie as well, one thing that I think I got really drawn into was something that I got off of the Ukraine bundle. I think it was on itch.
Oh yeah.
There was this game called Inmost, and it was just pixel drawn platformer, but you're playing 3 different stories, and it was just beautiful. The stories were so engaging. You have this little girl in this kind of very abusive household. You have just this guy who's just wandering, trying to figure everything out. And then this warrior, except he seems like he could be a bad guy. I'm not sure. And I just found myself so engaged with it. And it's like, this is what, to me, indie gaming is, to be able to tell amazing stories that really get you to question and to think. And then obviously the artwork, again, gorgeous. I'm just staring at the screen like, wow, somebody went and made all of this themselves. And it's kind of here's the big AAA studio game I like, and here's the indie game. And certainly the visuals are a big part. I know that at some point you're going to ask about my background and whatnot, but I've always been a bit of an artist myself. I was kind of traditionally, I went to Parsons School of Design for illustration. I wanted to be a comic book artist, and then I found out how little they got paid. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's always a problem there, isn't it? But it's great that you mentioned Half-Life, because I have a very deep connection with Half-Life 2, because I saw my uncle playing it for the first time, and my uncle is the person who got me into video games in the first place. Because my dad, I mean, yeah, he did like playing Spyro and all those, but my uncle was the one who introduced me to video games. So every time I think of Half-Life 2, I think of my uncle and seeing him play it on his PC. And then later on, I managed to play it too. I haven't played Alex yet, but I did buy it. But I did play Inmost. I didn't know it was in the bundle for Ukraine. Actually, I did donate to that one too. But I played it before then, and it's just so beautiful. I agree on everything you said: the art style, the story, how it's told, and all of that. So yeah, it's great that you mention it. Another great game. Funny enough, first episode, and the listeners, those who have listened to the first episode will know. But in the first episode, I said the exact same thing. I want to speak to you guys, you as developers, also because maybe you will help me find new games to play. And so far, 2 out of 2, I've played everything that you mentioned. So that's great. But yeah, and however, I have another reason to get into to get on and play Half-Life Alyx. So yeah, I will definitely do that. But yeah, speaking of background, Nick mentioned a few things that you wanted to be an artist and all of that, but I think we all have a specific aha moment when we're like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do with life and with my career. And then we commit to it. Well, some people do. Others maybe steer away sometimes. But what was your aha moment?
There's actually been 2. One when I was about 15 or so, I went to a buddy's house and he had just gotten... this is really going to date me, but he had just gotten an Atari 800 computer, and he was just playing around with some of the graphic functions on it. And I was just, this is incredible. Like, I have all these ideas in my head that if I could just put it on a screen, this, it was mind blowing. So I literally went home and just started graphing out sprites on that blue line graph paper. And I kind of made him promise, like, can I come and learn how to program on this? Which it never worked out, but that was that first, light bulb over the head. And during the years, I've done different things. For a while, I was trying to work on becoming a texture artist, and I was doing things like the original Quake 1, adding textures to that, and then Doom 3, and then the Half-Life engine or the Half-Life 2 engine. And the next big aha moment was when I had gotten into VR and, immediately loved it, but also found that I wanted to create for it. That sense of presence, that sense of being there just really said, oh, you're a creative person. You want to put people in the worlds you have in your head. And I quickly came to understand that the ideas that I had, how they say to indie developers, don't overscope, always start small. Well, of course I didn't listen to that. I was
Yeah.
I didn't have any programming chops. I'm quite programming adverse. And I should have known this from back in the high school days where we're learning basic on Tandy TRS-80 computers. I just, after staring at code, I start to get retinal burn-in. I start to get a headache. I did the same trying to learn HTML. But we have a really robust local game dev group here, and they would do things like, here's a little seminar that we're going to do on teaching you, pixel graphics. Or the one that I found was how to code in Playmaker, which is, visual scripting program. I saw it and I saw just, oh, this is flowchart. This speaks to me. This says, you have a way of getting your ideas to actually interact and do things. So I went, I did this class, and I was just suddenly like, okay, I'm back. I'm in this. I can totally do, the programming end of it. And as I'm just tinkering, I had initially started with a just a little block, but I took one of my kiddos' drawings. I just taken a picture of, cropped it, slapped on. I was like, oh, kiddos' drawings look kind of cool. So then I'm also trying to learn VR dev, and I took this drawing, this one right here, and I slapped it on a character controller. And at this particular point, kids, they see daddy's got new toys, so they're like, daddy, daddy, daddy. Okay, all right, I'm getting just irritated. So I basically just took the headset, put it on the kiddo, and I went to go scrub the bathroom or something. Yeah, just darn it. 5 minutes later, I'm hearing my kids hysterically laughing. Just like that real special kind of laugh that kids will do that it's just like, oh, So I kind of wander back in, and all they're doing is walking this character off the edge, and he's just falling into the void. But they are just laughing hysterically at that. And I'm like, okay. I put the headset on, and I'm like, this is something. This is really something. And I've just been running with this ever since. I, cut it, rigged it, animated it. I started changing like the face to have expressions. And I started showing it to people, and they were like, go with this. This is something, unique and different. And I guess like the next big aha moment was a mentor of mine was showing at a local game dev expo. And he called me like out of the blue, just saying, hey, normally I just run a booth at this expo to promote my own little business, but I usually just have somebody show a game locally just so there's somebody sitting there all the time while I go out and network. My guy quit. Do you have anything you could show? And I was like, I darn well better. And threw together like a 10-minute demo, went down to Columbus, Ohio, because that's where I'm around. Yeah. I showed my game at this game dev expo, and people just connected with it. They just saw the kids' art. They'd smile. I'd invite them to sit down, and either their kids would want to play, or they just connected it because they had kids. And when I told them, this is my kiddo's artwork, and he's on the autism spectrum, well, then plenty of people would say, oh, I've got a nephew, or I've got a cousin, or that. Just those different elements really drew people in. And it kind of became this thing that started growing with or without my input. And people were giving me ideas. People were giving me incredible feedback about, oh, if you did this, this would be cool. And I'm just furiously writing this down on a piece of paper that I still have in a box somewhere. And kiddos were like bringing me artwork, like, hey, maybe you could put my drawing in game. And I'm like, maybe I could.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just these like little moments that came together that said, this is what you got to do. You got to be this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just a look at Booper makes it look just so special. I mean, there's no question there's something very special about it, and you can feel that deep connection between you and your kids, and you can feel the deep connection to the story, and even just the concept, I suppose. The concept of putting a kid's drawings into the game and animating them. So yeah, I do, for what it's worth, I do think it's a rather unique thing to develop and work on. And yeah, I don't believe you have a finished version of it yet, but unless you have some sort of surprise.
No, I've got a nice 10-minute vertical slice, and because of various factors, I've been working on it. I have a bunch of levels that are in various stages, all the way up to like almost alpha ready. And my mentor, who just recently became a dad himself, has found that once you have a kid, game dev kind of comes to a halt. But he's been helping me with marketing strategies, game dev document, and just all those little background things that he can sit there and hold the kid in one hand and look at his phone and say, oh, okay, that's a good idea, and maybe change this and whatnot. So it's got me reinvested. It was 2019. I was slated to show my demo at the Cleveland International Film Festival, which was going to be huge, because the Game Dev Expos, we would have an audience of maybe 5,000 people. Film Festival was supposed to have 100,000.
Oh,
and
wow,
that
okay.
would have just been a huge opportunity.
Plus
and
all the press, which is huge to just
a week before that, I was also going to be interviewed on like our local NPR station, National Public Radio, and be able to kind of tout the film festival, tout my game, and both things got shut down because of COVID.
Oh no! Yeah, that's really annoying.
Yeah. Kind of went into a bit of a depressive funk for a while, and I was just impossible to do anything because I had a wife and two kids who were all working and schooling from home, And because they're all on Zoom calls, I'm literally running up 3 floors, playing tech, bringing snacks, drinks, and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'm kind of still shocked that I did not somehow lose the very convex dad bod that I've got from all the exercise. But the one thing that got me out of it was that I applied to and got accepted into the Oculus Launchpad program,
Oh, okay. I'm not
which,
familiar
yeah,
with the Oculus Launchpad program. Would you tell me what it is?
pretty much they have this program. And again, it's a little bit of a bummer because of COVID, but it's a starter program for indie developers like myself,
Yeah.
where you pitch them an idea, and if they like it, well, back in the day, they would have flown you out to San Jose, and you would have spent a week long, like intense boot camp on, getting a game together, getting all your optimizations and whatnot. And then you would just go and work on it for 6 months and then submit it to them. And if they picked you, you would have gotten like a good chunk of money, marketing, and a whole bunch of other like help from Oculus to get your game out.
Right.
Because of COVID, they didn't fly us out, but it was all Zoom calls and whatnot. Still was an amazing experience. Plus, they are very generous with their hardware. They gave me
Perfect.
at the time it was a Go and a Oculus Rift S, and
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
for just an average guy like myself, that was a huge boon. The only way that I was able to actually get any sort of hardware was to go and sell paintings. My sister-in-law was absolutely like fantastic that she moved into this pretty big house, and she said, "Well, I want you to do a painting for me." I'm like, okay. So, I did a nice epic scene of a train going across a trestle bridge, and
Oh, wow.
it was
Okay.
just enough for me to get my first VR headset.
There you go. Yeah.
But
Well,
then,
you
yeah,
can't see it from my blurred background, and of course the listeners won't be able to see it. But I do have an Oculus Quest right over there on the shelf.
mhm.
And yeah, it is always fascinating to play around with these tools. But I can imagine it's even more fascinating for you to develop things with them. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, COVID was a big bummer for everybody. It just shut a lot of things down, and fortunately, things are starting to open up again. But as we know, there's still bit challenging times, so to speak. So yeah, but it does sound like you're getting back into it, and yeah, that's really good to know. So well, I guess you kind of answered this question of mine, which is what's a game you played recently that made you go wow? I suppose it's Inmost, isn't it? Unless you have something else.
Well, actually, I was going to say Stray. I had just
Oh
gotten that.
yeah.
Yeah, because I saw it from its very early stages of inception. And initially, it was being billed as a cat in a really near and dear to my heart place called Kowloon Walled City,
Hmm.
which was in Kowloon, except it was this incredibly dense kind of lawless zone that was just built on top of itself. And I think at one point it was maybe a couple of acres big, but had 50,000 people living in it. And the
Okay.
police didn't go there. There was supposed to be, like the tongs and drug dealers and prostitutes, but people just living there as well in this kind of densely
Okay.
compact. You wouldn't even see the daylight when you were walking through the streets because it was so accreted over itself.
Oh yeah. Well,
And
what do you say it's called?
um,
Calhoun.
yeah, Kowloon Walled City, and they tore it down in I think the early '90s. But for a while, it was the most densely populated place on the planet, and it's just got such a unique and rich history that I think it was initially a British fort, and then as the political tide shifted, it became more of a camp for refugees, and then they just started building up and up and up. And from the outside, it literally just looks like a big square set of walls with some windows in it. And it's always been kind of a dream of mine to make a game based in that setting. And when I heard, ooh, a cat in this, and then it evolved a bit more, that it became a little more cyberpunky, and yeah, instead of people, they were robots and whatnot. It developed its own little story, which absolutely just gorgeous plot. Humanity's pretty much died off, and the world's populated by robots, and even they've kind of lost their way. So this little cat helps them rediscover their, I don't want to say humanity, robotity, but it's was just
Humanity
really
and Robotity. That reminds me of Yoko Taro and his Nier series. That's always a good one for me. But yeah, please go on.
indeed. So I really enjoyed that, and there's plenty of games that I can play here and there, and there's other games like Stray where I just sat down and tore through it,
Yeah,
and
those are always special.
I'm still going through and trying to get all the achievements because I don't know, I'm one of those completionists. Get my money's worth.
Yeah. Well, that's very good to hear because again, Stray is also on my list, and I will play through it at some point. But as a cat person, I mean, it could not be on my list. So yeah, well, I suppose you did kind of answer this here and there, but why are you a game developer? What is it that drives you forward? Of course, I guess doing Booper, that there's a very personal reason behind doing it. You're having fun with your kids, and you're also doing something that you think is very great. And I also think it's quite unique to put it in the world. Is there something else?
I mean, yeah, you kind of hit on it with my son. It's basically, even if this goes nowhere, I can imagine in 20 years he'll see the old VR headset and I'll dust it off and hey, me and the old man, we made this. Kind of. There's that satisfaction, but there's just something about he'll play test for me, and when he takes off the headset, he'll run over to his sketchbook and he'll draw something and bring it to me, like, put this in the game. I mean, there's plenty of times I got to say, dude, that's Mario, that's copyrighted, can't do that. But yeah, it's just the fact that we're kind of playing off of each other's creativity. And of course, my younger son also likes getting in on it. He loves doing sound effects. I think partially just to see the needle jump as he's yelling, but it's literally become kind of a family thing. My brother out in Indiana has aspirations of being a voiceover actor. So he's done some of the narrator. I kind of had this idea that I wanted somebody to either provide exposition or perhaps hints. And obviously being a stay-at-home dad, I've watched a lot of cartoons. My kids loved Curious George, and blew my mind that the narrator in that is none other than William H. Macy, very respected actor. And okay. I like the way that he narrated. It's a very pleasant kind of baritone voice, and definitely just a nice little inflection on certain key moments. So I told my brother, hey, can you do this kind of, narration? He said, I'll give it a shot. And I liked what I heard. So I'm at a point where I know that there's several cartoons where they just had somebody in this writing staff, for example, just voice the character just to get the idea. And they got to a point like, well, we can't imagine anybody else doing the voice. So congratulations, you're now the voice.
You're hired.
Exactly. So, and then my wife has provided some amazing like plot ideas to really kind of, take it from just okay, it's a walking sim, or okay, it's a platformer, to a really good, strong narrative game as well. And then my niece and nephew who live down in Columbus, they're big video game fans. They've played it. They've given amazing feedback. And well, as soon as I can get a little funding and I can get them a VR capable laptop, I'm giving them my old Vive, and I've got play testers.
Wow. Yeah.
And as they've been growing up, they're discovering their own talents. And my nephew is a really talented piano player, and my niece has an incredible singing voice. So again, as soon as I get just a little bit of funding, I've got a composer who very generously wrote me a beautiful piece of music for my trailer. I'm just going to say, here, write me a piece for female vocal piano and make it one of those Disney-esque, really sad song, not a dry eye in the theater type song. So I can have a moment when Booper's just lost, it's raining, this sad song comes on, and again, it's a family thing. My
Like,
niece and nephew will perform it.
and it's a family thing. I mean, you say that, but it really is a family thing. Like, it sounds like everyone in your family is kind of pushing you, even subconsciously or maybe indirectly, to do this game or to just be who you are. And that's really amazing. I mean, you have a very creative family, possibly one of the most creative families I've ever heard in my life. 'Cause, my dad plays guitar, I play guitar a little bit. But I'm a writer myself, so but the creativity in the family ends there, quite literally there. And then my sister is studying architecture, so yeah, she's an artist herself. But then, I mean, outside the three of us, I can't think of anyone else in the family who's into creative stuff. And there you have it. You have a like creative inspiration from every part of your family. That's just amazing. But with that said, I mean, would you ever consider going to a publisher, like one like Annapurna, for example, or Devolver? I think Annapurna maybe would be a bit more, because Devolver is a lot more random, a lot more quirky, fun, and all of that. But yeah, what do you think?
It would really depend, because obviously, there's a little bit of controversy with Annapurna and some of the teams that they've worked with.
Of course, yeah.
That they've kind of ignored allegations of some wrongdoing. It really would depend on terms and conditions, because obviously I have a pretty straightforward vision as to what I think this should be, and having to work with other people, or especially like venture capitalists, for example, they're going to want changes for what they think that the product will be. I've talked to people about seeking funding and whatnot, and a lot of people have flat out said, well, we really don't see a market for this, because it's not falling into the standard Call of Duty zombie shoot 'em up thing that pretty much dominates VR for the most part. And they're obviously looking at the numbers. They're looking at what will sell. We know we get such a return on a zombie shooter. We know we get this amount of players
Of course, yeah.
in an online World War II shooter. So they see my single player kind of passion project, and well, we'd like to, but so I feel that yes, if I had a publisher, I'd have some very strict, like the plot is almost like set in type. I'm not adding multiplayer. Certainly that's way beyond my abilities, first off. And that I've got my creative team. It would be great to have somebody say, okay, well, we'd love to fund your game, and here, you get to work with John Carmack. But
Yeah, of course.
I think
Yeah.
John would have some ideas about what, and I'm going to be like, dude, I don't think so. I love you, but no, this is my game. Please go away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, I mean, I will get to the part where I ask you how people can support you in a bit, but at some point you mentioned that instead of being small in scope when you develop your very first game, you decided to go big all at once. So do you have any funny memories or fun facts about that very first experience?
Well, part of, because I know at some point it'll be like, what did you do before this? I used to live in New York City, lived there for 20 years. And obviously the city kind of really influences who you are as a person. And when I tried VR, the very first thing that I thought was like, this would be a great empathy machine. If you can feel like you're in a different place, you could also feel like you're in somebody else's shoes. And one thing that really struck me as a person, when I was single, I was living in New York, was seeing homeless people and just seeing how they're neglected, how they're just kind of cast aside. And it was a real shame, because I was dirt poor, I was an artist, so I've got nothing to do except sit on my stoop. Well, I ended up talking to like the local homeless guy on our block. His name was Curtis. And he was always just incredibly sweet, because we really couldn't afford anything except I asked for a pair of rollerblades, and I used that to get around the city instead of having to shell out for cabs or subways. And obviously got in the best shape of my life then too. But every time he'd see me on my skates, Curtis would always say, "Hey, you be careful out there." And will do, sir. And I tried to, if I had extra sandwich or just a couple of bucks, I try to take care of him. because I mean, I saw how cold it got on the street, and I can't imagine living in a cardboard box. And
Oh yeah.
so when I got the VR, like the first thing that popped in my head is, imagine what it would be like just being in a subway station, for example, and you're just begging for change and trying to think of ways that people would
Oh,
just be really mean and nasty to you. And you could see how we treat our homeless people. And obviously, I tried to turn it into a game, and how would you have like win conditions and things like that. And I got hung up on just the physics of trying to hold a
of course,
cup
yeah.
in a VR controller. Oh,
Yeah.
a scope too big. My bad.
But that's an incredible idea, though. Using VR as an empathy machine, I never thought. I mean, indie developers could use it that way. Like, just try to make you fit someone else's shoes, and just try to understand what they are going through all the time. And you know, a lot of amazing stories can be told that way. So yeah, maybe after Booper, you could get back into that, because it sounds like something that I would definitely want to experience. So yeah. But that's actually a nice segue into my next question. I feel like some of the others you've kind of answered here and there. But this one, do you ever feel lonely or discouraged as an indie game developer? And how do you cope with that?
Would it be wrong to say all the time? No, I do and I don't, because, you know, like the COVID thing where I just was unable to work. That was devastating. Having this amazing opportunity to get yanked away was also just so discouraging. And while I do have a local game dev community, there are plenty of limitations that we can't meet up. We can't do anything except maybe see each other at our big expo once a year and whatnot. I still have obviously plenty of obligations as a stay-at-home father. You know, kids need to be fed, wife needs a lunch packed for work and things like that. Uh, but yeah, there's a certain kind of, I'm just plugging away at this, and I have no idea if it's any good. I have no idea if it's something that the public will be receptive to. And in doing all these things, whether I'm trying to work out a little bit of a code to get my character to jump the exact same way that I want it to, or I'm trying to figure out, okay, I've got to get this 350 high by 850 thing for my banner for my store, and does it look right? And there's been luckily enough times that I've gotten assistance right when I needed it. When I didn't win the Oculus Launchpad, they did come to me and say, "Hey, you didn't win, but we liked you enough that we're giving you a consult with a marketing firm, and you get in a 1 hour shot. You show them your materials, and they'll, you know, tell you what's good, what's bad, what needs improvement, and whatnot." And I talked to this lovely lady who gave me such great, like, creative input about my pitch, about my actual visuals, and got me thinking in different ways. And then, like I mentioned before, I'm working with a mentor who kind of gave me my first break. And he's been instrumental in getting me to think more about, okay, you have all these ideas, get it in the game design doc, get your marketing plan laid out, start thinking about different stores, because in addition to this VR game, I'm using the character to develop a mobile game as well.
Yeah, I've seen that
You
on
know,
your website. Yeah.
if I actually do, you know, break down and go after those investment people, they're going to want to see published stuff. They're going to
Of
want to see metrics. They're going
course.
to want to see. And when I do show people, you know, when I go to expos, like you said, getting to the, you know, how can people help kind of thing. If I have, you know, a $2.99 mobile game on the Google Play Store, here you go. You know, you can help buy my game, show it to your kids. You know, and as I've been working on like the coffee page, and I've been looking at some actual, they're kind of like Shark Tank um,
Mm-hmm.
opportunities. They're more geared towards like local businesses, like, hey, I'm opening up a coffee shop that
I see.
specializes
Okay.
in vegan and gluten-free stuff. But, you know, I'm also trying to pitch myself as, you know, a startup studio,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, we're notoriously billed as the Rust Belt, you know, old manufacturing that people have forgotten about. And a lot of these towns are starting to reinvent themselves as tech hubs.
Right.
We have a rivalry with the local town in the next state over called Pittsburgh, and they've gone from like a steel manufacturing town to kind of like a good like indie startup venture capitalist and tech type hub, where a lot of people who just need cheap office space and want to get their business off the ground, they can go there and get that kind of like infrastructure that they need. And we're kind of in a little competition, Cleveland and Pittsburgh, trying to outdo. Right now, we've got the edge on healthcare and healthcare technology. We've got a couple of major like metropolitan hospital systems that have got some of the top-notch surgeons. There've been like the Royal Prince of Saudi Arabia, I think, came here for a heart surgery a couple of years ago. So
yeah, it is. It sounds like it's evolving quite a lot. But yeah, that's it. And actually, that again, nice segue into the next one. First of all, actually, one little curiosity from me: if you could tell one thing to your younger self, what would it be? And I'm not asking this question because of the difference in age. I suppose I just ask it to a lot of. I'm planning to ask it to a lot of people, regardless. So yeah.
I mean, I do have the running joke because yeah, I am a bit older. And yeah, there's always that. If you could say 3 words to your, 15-year-old self, mine would be invest in Microsoft.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was working as in a donut shop as the janitor, scrubbing toilets and things like that. But if I had taken my meager paycheck and invested in Microsoft, then whew, I'd be like Gabe Newell right now. I had my own game dev company and. But certainly, I would say like as far as advice would be just do it, just try. One of the things that I've been finding is that yeah, I might have had some years where I was just drifting aimlessly and not really applying myself. Not to use the old high school counselor parlance.
Yeah.
But there's a great scene in the movie Braveheart with Mel Gibson.
Oh yeah,
where everyone's getting discouraged and just not sure what to do because things aren't going well. And he's like, "We have to try. We gotta try." And his buddy's like, "Why?" And he says, "Well, you know what'll happen if we don't?" And his buddy's like, "What?" "Nothing. Nothing will change. We'll always just be doing the same thing." And honestly, ever since this project's come, I've grown more as a person. I've grown more as a father. I wish that there was times that I was kind of drifting aimlessly in New York in my 20s that I could have said, just push, do something. Doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
Don't just go to a job.
Well, that's some great advice for any indie developer out there. Just do it, I suppose. And it's something that I deeply resonate with. There's so much, especially in creatives. Having worked and spoken and met a lot of creators in my career so far, there's always that kind of self-doubt. There's second questioning yourself, that imposter syndrome, and you're like, well, yeah, but am I really good at what I'm doing? Do I really know what I'm doing? I mean, I've been a writer for I don't know how many years now, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So, but apparently people like it. So it's just go out there and do something. That's a great little piece of advice for everybody. Before we wrap it up, shout out to other game developers that you admire if you have somebody.
Certainly, like a lot of people that I did the Oculus Launchpad with, Jonathan Jennings, who is making Galactic Bar Fight, talk with him all the time, and we just always kind of keep pushing each other. There's a lady who did this incredible experience. Her name's Lara Bukhari. And she was also on the Launchpad. She did an interactive acting piece where you go and you visit your grandfather, and it's like in VR, but grandpa, initially sees you in the crib and he's just playing with you. And then you come and see him again and you're a little bit older. So he's showing you the toys. But as this thing's going on, you're realizing that your grandfather's starting to slip. That he's either got dementia or just, he's getting old and forgetful. And what is first off amazing is that grandpa is being played by an actor in his own VR headset. And is reacting and acting off of what you're doing. I kind of had the temptation to just pick things up and start throwing them at grandpa and see what he would do. But, I behaved myself.
Yeah.
But in the process, you're realizing that you're developing a connection with this person. And then just the sadness that this connection that you're building is starting to fade. And this is all in the span of 15, 20 minutes. Uh-oh. I'm being invaded.
I hear
by
a cat, I think.
Cat here.
Yeah.
But just the humanity, the actual depth of feeling that Lara was able to put into her project was just mind-blowing, because it tapped into what I was trying with my first failed experiments, is that sense of empathy, that touching that human component in all of us, and coming away with a sense of, I really enjoyed my time with this person, but now they're gone. And wow, that's the kind of heartstrings that I would love to be able to tug at in my game, just so somebody's like, I loved your game so much, I was crying, I ruined my head.
Yeah, I mean, connection, that human connection, that even virtual connection that you can develop with the character is just incredible. Yeah. But yeah, so let's to wrap it up, where can other people find you? Where can the listeners find you? And if they do, how can they support you? I think, are you launching a crowdfunding campaign for Booper? Is there something like that in the works for the future?
Currently, I have a coffee page at Fletcher Studios. That's just to kind of get things rolling. Based on my buddy Jonathan's recommendation, I might actually start putting out merchandise. Just, like the little stickers that I hand out at Game Dev Expos. My website's fletcherstudios.net. And yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And yeah, I've actually been looking at a rather unique crowdfunding, which is more investment than it is just, Kickstarter, where people will be actually giving me money to become part of my team, so to speak.
Oh.
Yeah. So it would be more like actual investor capital, as opposed to, here's dad throwing you $20 saying, good luck, kid.
Yeah. Okay, well, of course, I will put all of these links into the description of the episode. So if you are listening, if you have listened this far, and I hope you have, because it's been such an amazing conversation, just head over to the description of the episode and just give Thomas some support, because this project is amazing. And I can definitely see a lot of great things happening in the future. So, well, I guess that's a wrap on this second episode of the Indie Diarist. Thank you so much for your time, Thomas. It's been amazing speaking to you. And
hey, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime. And yeah, very, very much a pleasure. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on this second episode of the Indie Diarist. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Thomas, who was such a special second guest. Really, it was such an energizing chat. Loved it. So, if you love this episode, please subscribe to the show. You can find the Indie Diarist on every major podcast provider, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. And please consider following the show on social media. You can find it by looking for @the Indie Diarist. At the moment of recording this episode, only Twitter was available for the Indie Diarist, but more platforms will be coming and more ways to show your support in the future as well. And finally, if you're an indie game developer, please reach out. I would love to have you on the show. My DMs on Twitter are open, and I'm always open to welcoming someone who has a beautiful story to tell.